There is nothing worse than watching a fantastic show you've really gotten into, only to find out that the show has no proper ending. For it had been prematurely cancelled before I had the chance to properly conclude or tell the story that it wanted to tell. Some may argue this is a better outcome than a show with a crappy ending, but nevertheless, a cartoon cancelled because it didn't sell enough merchandise or because not enough people were watching it is truly a cruel fate. In this video, I'm going to be counting down 5 cartoons that I absolutely loved that were cancelled way too soon. But before we begin, I'd like to list off some honourable mentions. Shows that I may have not seen but I know are beloved enough to deserve a mention. These include Megas XLR, Danny Phantom, Kim Possible, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Courage Beware the Batman, and Invader Zim, because apparently it's getting a revival. Woohoo! This list is solely based off of my opinion of cartoons I've actually watched, and in order of how much I miss them. With that, let's get right onto the list. Transformers Animated was one of the most drastic reimaginings of the Transformers series, seeing a show with a different art style that was met with mixed reception, and a plot and story that rewrote the Transformers lore we were used to. In this show, Optimus Prime is not the leader of the Autobots, but instead the leader of a small team of mechanics who managed to find themselves stuck on Earth with the mythical Allspark, fighting against the legendary Megatron, leader of the ferocious Decepticons. Unlike most of the other shows on this list, Transformers Animated did actually receive an ending. The end of the show saw Megatron defeated, the Autobots victorious, Prowl catching a bad case of death, and Optimus and the gang returning to Cybertron. However, the creators of the show had grand ideas for the following season, planning on tying up the remaining loose ends and an entire plot to boot. Ironhide and Jazz would have joined the main team, the Autobots would have journeyed into a mirror universe, Megatron would have staged a spectacular prison break in order to escape. Several episodes had been scripted and ideas were being tossed around, and all of them sounded absolutely amazing. But because the show was airing on Cartoon Network, and we all know how kind Cartoon Network is, the show was cancelled without a second thought, and all of the ideas that the creators had went to complete waste, and would never get to see light in the small screen. Despite how fantastic animated Season 4 sounded, the fact that the show at least had an ending of some sort places it at the bottom of this list. I can't claim to be a massive fan of Thundercats, having not grown up with the original. However, I have watched the painfully short Thundercats reboot of 2011, which was an example of a revamp done right. The original Thundercats, while not exactly bad, is a show that has certainly not aged well. Ugh. Reboots of things are very common, especially franchises from the 80s and 90s, and most of the time these reboots are absolutely rubbish. One example being the Voltron 4 show that contains the same number of episodes as Thundercats, but absolutely none of the effort or love, which was also prematurely cancelled before it got its second season. On the other hand, we have things such as Thundercats, which brought back Lion-O and the gang in a fantastic new version of the series, containing beautiful animation, an epic overarching plot, brilliant action, and characters we could actually care about as they were developed. It improved the original's ideas, while still remaining an interesting modern-day cartoon. And I absolutely adore the character redesigns on all fronts. It didn't make everything overly dark and gritty like most reboots do, and it didn't take itself too seriously. It was a solid and enjoyable action cartoon and gave a good name for reboots, unlike a lot of reboots that we see nowadays. However, that isn't to say it was perfect. Unfortunately, it was a little too different than the original story, and took too many risks that ended up being bad for the show, turning characters into things that they originally weren't, which many fans really didn't like. Due to poor marketing and declining ratings and merchandise sales, Cartoon Network cancelled Thundercats after just one season of 26 episodes, seeing the plot inconclusive and the characters never completing what they had set out to do. We all know Genndy Tartakovsky as the absolutely brilliant creator of cartoons such as Samurai Jack and Dexter's Laboratory. However, one of his most underrated shows is Symbionic Titan, a show that sees its protagonist Ilana, Lance, and Octus, a trio of aliens from the planet of Galaluna, which had been taken over by the evil General Modular, crash land on Earth and attempt to disguise themselves as regular teenagers as they attend high school. It's a blend of overdone concepts that work surprisingly well, but the real gimmick of the show was the trio's ability to combine into the giant Symbionic Titan, a giant robot they used to combat the mutants that Modular sent to Earth to try and kill them. As previously mentioned, while the plot sounds like nothing original, Symbionic Titan takes these ideas and makes them really work. And for what it was, the show was incredibly enjoyable. Each episode followed a regular formula, with the first half of the episode seeing the three getting into antics, trying to blend in with the humans around them, and then afterwards forming the Titan to protect the Earth. But it was a formula that didn't get old throughout the show's tragically short 20 episodes. For a kids show though, Symbionic Titan certainly nearly crossed the line as to what it showed. How was this allowed to air exactly?
No.
The thing that sadly killed the show were the other action cartoons airing at the time, namely Ben 10, Generator Rex, and Star Wars The Clone Wars. While Symbionic Titan did well ratings-wise, Cartoon Network couldn't find a company to produce toys for the show. As a result, when Cartoon Network sought to lower the amount of action cartoons they had, they decided that out of all the shows to get rid of, Symbionic Titan was the one, and so the show was tragically cut short before it managed to tell the story that it had. The plot was never resolved, and so Alana and Lance never got the chance to defeat Modular and bring peace to their planet once more. Yet another show that was unjustly killed by Cartoon Network, even though this one was actually doing pretty well for the channel. I've personally never been that big a fan of SpiderMan, as due to how massive his presence is, I tended to shy away from the series, not really caring to get into it. However, along came the 2008 show Spectacular Spider-Man, which I personally believe is to date not only the best modern interpretation of Spider-Man, but also one of the best superhero cartoons of all time. It was a brilliant interpretation of the story we all know and love, with Peter Parker being the relatable nerd at school, leading the double life of Spider-Man, and donning the costume to defeat the villains that came his way. The action was awesome, the dialogue was believable and genuinely funny, and the character development and relationships were insanely well done, all things considered. The new villain interpretations were great, and we got arcs of the Sinister Six, Black Suit, and Venom, all of which were great. It was an incredibly well done telling of the Spider-Man formula, but held its own as a truly spectacular action cartoon. See what I did there? Despite the creators wanting to complete 65 episodes of the series, with a third season being in the planning stage which would have featured new villains Hobgoblin and Scorpion, the show was cut short when the evil corporation of Disney acquired the Marvel license and cancelled the show, despite the plot threads of the Green Goblin never being resolved, meaning that Norman Osborn got away and Peter never resolves the arguments with his friends. I mean, maybe he did, I guess we're never gonna know. Disney instead replaced it with this pile of shit, and so once again, another brilliant show that was doing well both merchandise and ratings-wise was taken away from us without proper reason.
When there's trouble, you know who to call. Teen Titans!
The original Teen Titans is beloved by so many, being a show that contained an absolutely perfect blend of humor, mature themes and action, and honestly really doesn't need an introduction. Unlike the rest of the cartoons on here, Teen Titans ran for a pretty long time, with a series comprised of 65 episodes and a movie. However, the show's eventual season 6 was cancelled by everyone's best friend Cartoon Network, and so all of the ideas and concept that would have developed in the following seasons were scrapped. And we all know what followed. Teen Titans was a show that did insanely well ratings-wise and merchandise-wise, more so than Spectacular Spider-Man. It is not known exactly why Teen Titans was cancelled. Many theorize it was because the female fanbase of the show grew too big, making it difficult to create marketing strategies to appeal to both genders, much like what happened to Young Justice. Another is that Cartoon Network simply felt the show had run its course. Whatever the reason, while the main plot thread of Season 5, The Brain and the Brotherhood of Evil, was concluded, the final episode of the series saw a rather confusing and inconclusive ending. Terra, a traitor to the Titans, mysteriously returned after being seemingly killed, and though Beast Boy makes efforts to try and talk to her, she doesn't acknowledge him at all. Meanwhile, the other Titans fight off a mysterious white and black colored creature that had no explanation whatsoever and no conclusion to his fight. The series ends with Terra telling Beast Boy that she was no longer the person he once knew, and so Beast Boy runs off into a white light. And that was it. While many have tried to work out what the final episode meant, it was purposely left vague, which means that the creators were just as devastated that the show was coming to a close as we were. Many thought that the creature the Titans were fighting was meant to represent Cartoon Network, considering the colors, and Terra telling Beast Boy that things changed was just a way for everyone to cope with the show's cancellation. Though it was succeeded by a movie a year after it had ended, which finally completed Robin and Starfire's relationship by finally having them kiss, a lot was left unresolved. What makes Teen Titans' abrupt ending hurt even more is what it was eventually succeeded by, which is why I placed it at number 1 on this list. But hey, before you go, if you like the shirt I'm wearing, be sure to head to Ripped Apparel, link in the description, and enter the code Diamondbolt for 10% off any purchase. If you want more shirts just as cool as this one, then this is definitely the site to check out. Thanks for watching.